It's not exactly one for the history books, is it? Oliver Dowden's last PMQs, but it was a very well-tempered exchange.
It was indeed. I mean, Oliver Dowden obviously tried to get Angela Rayner to explain what a working person is after we spent the entire election campaign with Labour saying they were not going to raise taxes on working people. And Oliver Dowden was obviously trying to get her to admit, perhaps, that in the budget, which we are expecting a week today, they will raise taxes on working people because if they were to raise taxes on, I don't know, the National Insurance Employee Contribution, which it sounds like they might, and Oliver Dowden suggesting that actually they were going to raise taxes on working people unless Angela Rayner would say what a working person was, which she did not. I felt like she didn't particularly answer those questions, instead prevaricating and talking about what the Conservatives had done during their 14-year history instead of actually specifically answering what a working person was.
Is there something about £100,000 as well? I know he didn't bring it up specifically, but hasn't there been a lot of chatter about whether or not people earning over £100,000 are actually working people, and Labour have been struggling to pin them down on this, which is an interesting ploy, I think, electorally, because I'm not sure that there is an enormous amount of sympathy for people earning over £100,000 in fiscal terms, except perhaps on Conservative benches and among Conservative supporting media.
I think you might be right. I mean, the interesting thing was, Sir Keir Starmer did actually define what he thought a working person was during the election campaign. He said, the person I have in my mind when I say working person is people who earn their living, rely on our services, and don't really have the ability to write a cheque when they get into trouble.
Yeah.
But that is so broad. And I guess the point that Oliver Dowden was trying...
But it would exclude most people earning over £100,000 a year.
Yeah, that's true. But I guess the point that Oliver Dowden was trying to make during that point is, well, if you're going to raise employee contributions for national insurance, are you saying that small business owners aren't working people? So it is going to be difficult, and I think it will continue to be difficult into next week, into the budget conversations. And that's what Oliver Dowden tried, and I would say actually tried successfully to do, despite the fact that he did it all with a smile on her face. And it did sort of seem like they were getting on well, even with those jokes at the end about both being ginger and making nice comments about the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. But you know, that was the last one ever. I think it was the fourth one they've ever done together. And unless, as you say, the next Tory leader, either Kemi Badenoch or Robert Jenrick, decides to promote Oliver Dowden or keep him in post, a deputy leader, that was the last one.
I'd like to read out a few messages at this point in proceedings, just to show you the variety of opinion. Angela Rayner is absolutely brilliant, definitely should be PM, says Tony. Dowden is running rings around Rayner. She sounds like a stuck record, says Rob, and I'm a fan. And Phil asks, is Oliver Dowden drunk? Demob happy. I'll say it, shall I? Demob happy, Phil, as opposed to drunk. And then Daisy Cooper.
So Daisy Cooper, the deputy Lib Dem leader, of course. Now she, as I think you would expect, because the Lib Dems tend to talk a lot about NHS and care, she asked whether the government would consider her party's idea for a winter task force for the NHS to ensure that more care leavers are available for people leaving hospital. Angela Rayner didn't really answer that. She said that they do want to improve care and get the NHS back on its feet, and also then went on to say she wouldn't speculate on the budget, but the budget will rebuild Britain. So I would say we didn't get that many specific answers from Angela Rayner, either to Daisy Cooper or to Oliver Dowden, or indeed particularly to Rachel Maskell, who's a backbench Labour MP. I think she's a York MP, who asked about palliative care at the end of life, and Angela Rayner saying, you know, we can meet the minister, we'll look at this, but not really giving her a specific answer on that either.
I should add, Wes Streeting is joining Sheila at 1 o'clock to take your calls, and he has revealed that he will vote against the assisted dying bill over concerns that end-of-life care is not good enough for patients to make an informed choice. That's an extraordinary intervention from the Secretary of State for Health.
And I think it really paints how big an issue this might be. I mean, the fact that he is going to be the minister in charge of implementing this were it to pass, and he's voting against it, is really difficult. And it's already a difficult debate. But Sir Simon Case, who's the Cabinet Secretary, has written to all of the Cabinet and asked them, because this is a free vote, basically asked them to remain neutral, asked them to not say their opinion, say whether they're going to vote for or against it. So Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, told MPs that on Monday night. It's been leaked. Shabana Mahmood, who's the Justice Secretary, has done an interview to say she'll be voting against as well. But it's difficult
because of her unshakable belief in the sanctity and the value of human life.
Indeed. But it's difficult for cabinet ministers because, now I wonder whether a few who are on the side of really thinking this is important to go through will feel they need to speak out and talk about it, even though they've all been told not to, because it's difficult. If some cabinet ministers are, others aren't. Sir Keir Starmer, we know, has previously talked about being pro the law going through. He obviously hasn't said that since the free vote has been announced. But it's going to be really difficult, and I can already pick up. It's being talked about a lot in the comments.
Is it?
And like round corners, it's the thing that everyone is talking about. Everyone wants to know how everyone's going to vote. And I think there's already a bit of anger. There's already worry about it being based on emotion and the fact that they're only going to get the legislative framework 2 weeks before they actually have to vote on it. I think there's concern, there's emotion. I think this has a long way to go, and I think it was going to be a difficult debate.
Speaking of what goes on in the House of Commons, so some people watching, and I don't know if you noticed because you were busy listening, but at one point, a couple of people have questioned whether they were hearing things or whether there was even a flirtatious air to some of the exchanges that we just heard between Rayner and Dowden. And at one point, I think Angela Rayner did that. For people watching on YouTube, I'm now making a heart shape with my hands in the style of young people. Angela Rayner actually did that across the House of Commons. I think that's the point at which Oliver Dowden said to Mr. Speaker, I won't be returning that. So for people who think they all hate each other, genuinely hate each other, the tone of those exchanges would have come as something of a surprise.
But I think that's great. I think it's brilliant when they sort of prove that they do have more in common than that which divides them, to quote Joe Cox. Of course they get on. Of course loads of them get on. They sit on select committees together. They have coffees together. You see it. Some of them do get on really well. Some of them do genuinely, viscerally hate each other. I always thought Keir Starmer and Boris Johnson seemed to viscerally hate each other. But I think those pair genuinely don't. And it'll be interesting to see who Angela Rayner's up with next time she's on with the Deputy Leader of the Conservatives.
Well, should we speculate?
Ooh, go on.
Well, I don't know. I'm thinking let's pretend for the time being that Robert Jenrick wins. Who are his sort of key allies?
So Robert Jenrick... Well, OK, I'm going to say first, I think if Kemi wins, you might have someone like Laura Trott, who was Chief Secretary to the Treasury. I wonder whether someone like her could become Deputy Leader. She's really highly rated, really liked.
Even after that interview with Evan Davis?
Even after that interview with Evan Davis, I remember the one. I think she...
Well, I suppose it depends on the depth of the talent puddle, doesn't it? In this. OK, so it'd be two women for the first time, I think.
That'd be cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think, who would it be for Robert Jenrick?
Does he have any friends?
Yes.
Are you sure?
I'm very confident. I can't think of any of them right now, but he genuinely does definitely have friends.
Do they go to a different school? Could that be what it is?
Who would it be? I mean...
And anyway, but we'll speculate on that. People can make their own suggestions. Who ran his campaign? Or who is running his campaign? It's not Grant Shapps. Grant Shapps said he was,
no, he
but
says
he was actually running James Cleverly's.
Not.
Yes.
I wonder whether it was Suella... I mean, that would be a bit bonkers, wouldn't it? But Suella Braverman has come out and said that she is pro-Robert Jenrick.
I think she could be deputy.
I mean, it would be quite the statement, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would indeed. What was I going to say? Remind us what the sort of state of play is on that. When do we get our decisions? When does it go to the membership? So the MPs have finished their role now.
The MPs have finished their role now. Conservative members are voting, and I think they've got until the end of the week to finish voting. And then we get the result on November the 2nd. So it is really in its final stages. It does sound like, when I speak to people involved, that the more likely winner is going to be Kemi Badenoch. But it's really difficult because Conservative members polling is really, really, really difficult to do. The Conservative members are sort of a bit of an unknowable beast. But people do, at the moment, think Kemi Badenoch. But previously, people thought Robert Jenrick. And before that, people thought James Cleverly.
So it's gone all the way around the houses.
Indeed, it has.
Certainly, I think the newspapers that brought you Liz Truss and Boris Johnson seem to favour Kemi Badenoch, don't they, generally?
Well, I think so. I mean, yesterday we had Charles Moore, we had Danny Finkelstein both coming out for Kemi Badenoch, and it does seem like she's increasingly becoming, I suppose, more of the establishment figure, which is interesting. I think Robert Jenrick has potentially boxed himself in a bit too much on leaving the European Convention
of Human Rights, which is an extraordinary thing to have done and appeals exclusively to people who've sort of fallen for Nigel Farage's shtick. So it alienates an awful lot of Tories who, for example, would share Winston Churchill's view on the European Convention of Human Rights.
Well, you heard it. I mean, Chris Patten was on, former chairman of the Conservative Party, was on at the weekend, and he was suggesting they both look a bit weird and said he could just never, even though he thinks Kemi Badenoch looks weird too, he could never vote for someone who was up for leaving that.
No. Well, we shall follow with interest. So there'll be one more PMQ next week. It will be Starmer and Sunak.
Starmer and Sunak, and then straight after that, it'll be the budget.
Yes.
And then just a couple of days later, so that's the 30th, and then we've got on Saturday, what day for it? We've got the Conservative Party announcement for who will be the leader.
A week on Saturday?
So, yeah, a week on Saturday. So then, the budget, and then 3 days later.
PMQs, and then a new leader for the Tories.
New leader on the Saturday.
The next but one.
Yeah. And
the PMQs.
And then they'll sort of make headlines throughout a day until 3 days later. It's the US election.
The excitement is off the charts, isn't it? Thank you, Aggie. Have we got any little bits of Donald Trump?